Hey guys, coming to you again from south of Adelaide with some more content for the content minds with complimentary lens flare. This just kind of accompanies you anywhere you go in Australia, I think. It's kind of unavoidable even in what is apparently the winter, although I would gently suggest that these people have no idea what winter is. In any event, I wanted to check in one more time briefly and just touch base on my favorite pet issue, that being Israeli-Saudi normalization. I've seen a couple of updates in the news recently that seem to indicate that this proposal is still very much on the table for the U.S. regime, certainly for the Saudi regime. It's difficult to tell what exactly is happening on the Israeli side of the table. We'll talk about that at the end of the video, I think, a little bit. But what it looks like still is that the plan, I mean, this would be sort of the ruby in the crown for the Biden administration's foreign policy objectives, if they were somehow able to instantiate or create a normalized diplomatic relationship between the Saudis and the Israelis. That would really, I think, upend the geopolitics of the Middle East quite substantially. You know, if that was inclusive of security guarantees and civilian nuclear programs and downplaying of Chinese weapon sales to the Saudis, all the better, right? I mean, from their perspective, and you know, I think from mine too. Obviously, the Saudi regime and the Israeli regime at this point are fairly unsavory characters to work with, but obviously you have to contextualize that within the wider picture in the Middle East, where, you know, if you're looking for savory characters, you're going to be looking for a while. So, you know, you're sort of picking your battles here and kind of choosing who to work with, where you think that there's potential for liberalization, potential for democratic regimes, potential for moderation of regime. That always has to be compared at the end of the day to the Iranians and their proxies. So I was surprised to see, just like I always am, to see that they're still working this. Biden administration and the Saudis seem to think this deal could materialize within days to weeks. That's probably true. What's interesting about this is that it all really hinges on Bibi and the Netanyahu regime. Obviously, the Saudis are keen, you might even say desperate, to have this materialize, I would say, at this point. Considering they haven't scuppered it already after everything that's happened, they really want this to happen, right? And to have it happen, they desperately need the Israelis to stop the bombings in Gaza, certainly not invade Rafah or anything like that. I'm just not sure that's in the cards for the Bibi Netanyahu regime. But that's going to be what is going to be required for this normalization to happen, and the normalization to happen, you know, that's obviously what needs to happen for the security guarantees and the nuclear collaboration between the U.S. and the Saudis. So it all kind of, you know, it all kind of hinges on Bibi, right? And unfortunately, for at least from my vantage point, who he's really trying to appease. Obviously, domestically, there's still huge pressure on him to return hostages and to make that happen, and that's ostensibly what's guiding this, I think, misguided invasion of Rafah. You know, I do wonder, as this, you know, moves forward, if and when we find that Hamas has sort of run out of cards to play here, and there isn't much left in terms of human beings, right? In terms of hostages who've been taken, really, what, you know, if that's an extremely limited number of people, or a much lower number of people, or in fact no people left, I think that the calculus changes somewhat for Bibi potentially. But in any event, it all continues to hinge on him, and in some way encouraging him through carrots and sticks to sort of, you know, have his fill here and move away from the war crimes, move away from the bombings in Gaza. So we've seen, with some posturing potentially around weapons shipments, we've seen certainly with a lot of strong language from the Biden administration, certainly with a lot of demands for cessation in settlements. I mean, really, the Biden administration has been extremely critical and harsh of Netanyahu's administration. I would argue probably more harsh than any other administration, certainly in my lifetime. He's been calling in one form or another for a cessation hostilities for quite some time. I think he's attempted to do that through pressure on Netanyahu. Now it looks like the other side of this is really the carrot that around, you know, normalization between the Saudis and the Israelis would be, I think, a game changer in the region, and would really herald a normalization and an acceptance of Israel's existence that someone like Bibi has to be wise to, has to be aware would be a massive historic achievement. An achievement that would outlast any importance that could, any sort of further gains that could be made from using force in Gaza. So it remains to be seen if he'll take the carrot or not. But as I've said for months here, I think the operation against Hamas, the correct way to do this was always to have done it tactically, slowly, methodically, reestablish deterrence through, hunting down everybody responsible, and that really hasn't happened. That wasn't the path the Netanyahu administration chose to take. I think, obviously, from a human rights perspective, it's too late to undo that. I think from a historic perspective, if the Netanyahu administration could in some way salvage its foreign policy relationships in the region by securing Saudi normalization, that would be a huge game changer, and would really signal the historical importance of the Netanyahu administration in Israeli history. So I'd like to see, obviously, again, this doesn't put the toothpaste back in the tube. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This is an administration that has, I think, taken grave missteps. But I don't think it's too late for the administration in some way salvage this greater diplomatic achievement, which would be a huge step towards a more peaceful region, and would be a huge step towards bolstering the U.S. and its allies in the region, which would have a lot of security consequences for the region. So anyway, that was kind of what I wanted to check in about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you think this kind of a deal is still possible. Thanks as always for watching, and thanks for your comments. Hey guys, wanted to check in with an addendum to the video. I'm back in the States finally, and some news has dropped on this topic, so I wanted to kind of check in. And now that I've recovered from that 35-hour flight back from Australia, that was a beast. But there was some recent coverage of the normalization deal, and it looks like, kind of as I predicted, the Netanyahu administration is just really up against it with their coalition domestically, and some of the key pieces of normalization around sort of some kind of viable Palestinian state, which is obviously going to be a huge requirement on the Saudi side to be able to sort of sell this thing to their allies, to their domestic audience. I mean, that's kind of also, I think any adult looking at this situation agrees there's got to be some kind of resolution there, where the Palestinians have kind of a viable way forward here. It looks like any and all of that is pretty, pretty much a no-go from the more conservative parts of Bibi's coalition domestically within Israel. So we're looking at sort of the prioritization of his regime, his personal political future even, over Israel's sort of future, over any and all other considerations. Obviously, these articles I'll link here, the Biden administration is very frustrated by this. Human rights folks are very frustrated by this. It's just sort of, we're all kind of, it all hinges on Bibi at the moment, and unfortunately that's that's just a really bad place to be. He's really up against it. He's fighting for his political future because that's the political animal that he is. So I guess, from my perspective, unless and until something changes with the conflict with Hamas, we're going to kind of continue to see a holding pattern here, and Bibi's intransigence will continue to kind of limit progress on this front, which is kind of unfortunate, I think, for all parties involved, to be honest. Anyway, thanks again, and as always, looking forward to your comments down below.